Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. I'm back with the contest crew, Bill W9KKN, Chris KL9A, Randy K5ZD, and Dan N6MJ. We're just off the IARU HF World Championship weekend, and I'm anxious to hear what has happened with all the guys. Before we begin, a quick thank you to our sponsor, DX Engineering, your source for everything you need to get on the air with and stay there. From antennas to amplifiers, they've got you covered. Visit dxengineering.com to learn more. So let's get started. Dan, I want to start with you because I was really intrigued to see that you ended up in New Jersey. Tell me how that went.
So during our last episode when we talked about IARU, I mentioned on the podcast that I really didn't have a place to operate from. It's kind of like down. I was going to operate from home and just do a few hours here and there kind of a thing. And so after that episode aired, I got an email from Tariq, N2QV, and he's like, hey, I saw that you didn't have a place to operate from. And he's like, do you want to come operate here? And those of you that don't know, Tariq is where N5DX had been operating from for many, many years. I think most of the USA records for the big DX contests and single ARP are held at that station. So when I got that email, it didn't take me long to say yes. I went and asked my wife real quick, and of course she always says yes. So like, okay, I got that okay. I asked my boss, and she said yes. I'm like, okay, let's do this. I got a ticket, and off we went to New York.
So I stand corrected. I said New Jersey, but it's actually in New York. Whereabouts in New York is it, Dan?
So he's in the Catskills. So I landed in Newark, New Jersey, and it was roughly like a 90-minute drive up to where the QTH is.
And I have interviewed N5DX, and we talked a little bit about that station, but why don't you give a refresher to the audience? What is there?
Yeah, I might get some of this wrong, but it's going to be pretty close. So for the high bands, his main antennas, he's got a 4-high tri-bander stack. I don't know what kind of tri-bander it is. I think, Kevin and Stan might have even helped design that thing. But I know on 10 meters, it ends up being a 4-stack of 7 elements. On 15, it's a 4-stack of 6 elements. And on 20, it's a 4-stack of 4 elements. All in a rotating tower. It's a 150-foot tower. And I think the 4 antennas are at 150, 120, 90, and 60 feet. And then on second tower, he's got another 180-foot rotating tower with 4/4 on 40 meters. These are full-size Yagis. I think they're at 180 and 120, something like that. And he's also got a 2-element beam on 80 on that tower as well. And then the real impressive part of that station is on 160. He's got a full-size 4-square on 160 that works really, really well. He's super loud, especially into Europe. And then on the receive side, he's got by far the best receive antennas I have personally ever used. It just sounded amazing. You could just tell it was really, really clicking. And so he has 1,000-foot beverages, and to the northeast towards Europe, he's got a phased pair of 1,000-feet beverages, and then he's also got 1,000-foot beverages to the west, to the northwest, and to the south. And those things really, really played well.
So Dan, you fly across the country, sort of last minute. Was it turnkey? Was the station ready to go when you got there?
So the station itself is pretty turnkey, so everything's there. Tariq and Scott, WU2X, use that station a lot for DXing. And so when they do a contest, they have to change some stuff over. So Scott was busy during the week making the changeover for me. I actually got a chance to operate remotely a little bit too before the contest started, so I can kind of get a feel for the propagation in the station. Their remote setup worked really well too. I was actually working in Denver that week leading up to the contest, and the CWTs are on Wednesday, and so Wednesday morning I was still laying in bed. Pull out my laptop, and while I'm in bed, I just did the CWT, worked 200 guys. It was no problem. It was kind of cool, actually.
I'm really interested in what he uses for a foot switch there.
Oh, yeah. So when I got there, I asked them because during testing I've only been doing CW. That's the easiest way to do remote. So all the testing was on CW. They were aware that I was going to be doing sideband 2. It's a mixed mode contest, and I wanted to do mixed mode. I set a goal of trying to maybe break the USA record. That was the goal going in. And so I asked them, so where's the foot switches at? And Scott looks at me like, what foot switch? I'm like, how do you do a sideband contest with a foot switch? I didn't quite understand, But it actually worked out well because one of your previous guests, Sebastian, KI2D, he lives about 20 minutes away from Tariq. They have never met before, okay? But they had exchanged a few emails here and there. And so Tariq emails Sebastian and says, hey, do you have a foot switch? Well, he did not have a foot switch, but he had a hand switch, one of those Heil like little push to talk things, and so he brought that over, and we taped it to the floor, and it worked great as a foot switch. But anyway, it was kind of cool that Sebastian was able to come over for the first time, see the station. He got the tour and all that. And Sebastian himself was an amazing guy. I really didn't know much about him, honestly, going in, other than the fact that he was on your show. But he really, he had a lot of experience with DXlog, which was very helpful because Scott had never used DXlog before. They're an N1MM station, and I'm just not a big fan of N1MM, so they decided to go with DXlog, and so Sebastian was able to help with that. We're having some minor flex radio issues, and he jumped in and helped with that too. It was just a great overall experience. And then the final piece to the puzzle here was my dear friend, Bill W9KKN. He came to the rescue because we had some minor... I knew it was going to be a stupid problem that was an easy fix, and we just couldn't figure it out. So we call up Bill. He logs into our computer, and after a while, we figured out what the issue was. It was a PTT thing. And once we got that going, the rest was history, and I was ready to go.
Clearly, everybody needs Bill on speed dial.
Sorry, Bill.
Bill's the go-to guy. I think I've called him from every station I've operated at the last couple of years. We called him from St. Kitts with Randy one time. Mixed us right up. We'll put your phone number at the end of the video, Bill. So Montana was hot, real hot. And, everyone's favorite story is all my antennas breaking all the time. So that's cool. I pull up to the station and my new 80-meter four-square was in pieces. 3 of the 4 verticals were broken. I mean, totally unusable. Upon further inspection, one of the guy wires broke about halfway up, and it just like a domino effect, and it took a whole bunch of other stuff down with it. So didn't get to use that antenna. Hooked up the single vertical that was still working, which still is a great antenna. And that was my 80 meters. Lots of work to get set up. I got there late. I had to work the day before when I didn't plan on that. So instead of getting to the station the night before, I got there about noon on Friday, which took 12 hours of setup away from me. So that was not ideal, but whatever. It is what it is. So I didn't hook the air conditioning up, which was an executive decision that was probably not the greatest. I didn't want to deal with it at the time because I was too tired and grumpy. And it was at least 92 degrees the whole contest in the shack, and it peaked at 96, like 96.3. It was not ideal. And in the middle of the night, I had the door open and the windows open and everything for the airflow. And the cool thing was all the bugs came in because all the lights. I don't know what they were, but there's all kinds of cool stuff. No mosquitoes, nothing biting, but a lot of big flying insects everywhere landing on me and on it. It was great. It was a good time. But it was super fun on the scoreboard chasing Pat. At one point, I passed him for about 5 minutes, and then he destroyed me on the low bands and brought me back to reality. But even being close to Pat with the tri-bander at 44 feet was pretty cool. So it was a great contest. Even though I didn't win and I didn't do anything special, I'm still kind of riding the high from just operating. It was fun.
And Randy, in Ohio?
So with the help of Mike WA3C this past week, we got the first tower up 70 feet and had nothing on it. So Saturday morning, this is after the contest had started, I decided I'm going to put up an 80-meter dipole that I happen to have rolled up from the Massachusetts house. So I climbed up and put a pulley up there and a rope down and pulled up an 80-meter dipole that went from like 68 feet at the top to 10 feet at the bottom, out at the bottom at the end of the property. And I used that as my antenna for most of the contest. I had a 40-meter dipole at 20 feet, which I used on 40, but otherwise I used the 80. And the K3 antenna tuner seemed to work. I could tell I wasn't very loud because I called, not everybody could hear me. But it also made it kind of interesting because you can really tell when you're running low power with a not very good antenna, the guys who can hear. Because they come right back to you, you got the whole call, no problem. And then other guys can be loud and you call them and they just call CQ again. So a little bit of frustration. And there were a few times I called guys that were super weak and they came right back. So you never know. But the fun part of the contest for me was I had this 80-meter sloper, and I figured, well, what the heck? I got on about 0200 and got on 80 and called CQ just for fun, and had a bunch of guys call me, including some Europeans. I ended up working like 150 guys on that one frequency, and including having ZS1C call me and PW2F. I had 3 of the WRTC GB test stations call in. No way of knowing whether I was actually loud or not, but at least I was loud enough that people called in. So that was kind of my fun for the weekend. And I didn't even bother to get up the next morning to see what was going on. So I couldn't tell conditions were bad because my antennas were so bad. I was just happy to work anybody.
So Randy, I don't want to get too far away from this contest, but since you're in the middle of a rebuild, what are the next 2 or 3 months looking like for you?
Well, this week, hopefully tomorrow, we're going to get very close to getting the second tower up. Once the 2 towers are up, I've got to build all the antennas that I have. I have the equivalent of a Rector set where you threw all the pieces into the box. So you know you have all the pieces, but now you have to find them to build something useful. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'll start putting antennas together, and then hopefully the plan is to have a crane come out and put the antennas on top of the towers. And the main reason I'm going with the crane is because one of my acquisitions is a 2-element Moxon for 40, and it's just a little bit cumbersome to try to do it. I mean, we could do it with tramming and so on, but it'll just be faster and safer to have the crane come out and do everything at once.
And Bill, I know we were joking about your tech support, but I don't think Dan was the only person you were helping this past weekend. Is that right?
He wasn't. The hotline was very busy this weekend. So I had plans to look for a station to operate, but a few of my primary choices sort of fell through, which was okay. On Thursday, I get this call from N2NT. NP4Z is at G4 AFF station. They were gonna, I guess they were both gonna travel there, but Andy couldn't do it, and they wanted to remote it. They wanted to let Andy remote into that station remotely so that they could practice for WRTC. And it turned out that that station only had what was effectively cell phone internet, and it was using carrier grade NAT, and they had no way of really making the remote work, except for the tricks that I talked about at CTU, where you set up a box somewhere in the middle and you bridge all that together. And so I spent a good portion of Thursday and a little bit of Friday kind of getting that working for him, and then Dan called, and then I just kind of watched the contest all weekend and enjoyed everybody complaining about the propagation.
So 100%, I am going to put your phone number at the bottom of the screen for this.
Oh no!
Yes,
changing it. So it's a 900 number now.
So does anybody want to tackle the how are the conditions questions? Because I had family in town. I wasn't paying as much attention, but it seemed to be a lot of feedback online about conditions being bad. But I don't know if that's true or not.
let me hit that one real quick. So the thing about bad conditions is everyone has the same bad conditions. So if you're competing, it doesn't really matter. You're competing against the guys with the same bad conditions. And it's not like they were terrible. They just weren't last year's conditions. The polar path wasn't great, but it wasn't totally gone. So, and people kind of get this weird idea that summer conditions are going to be fantastic and they can run 15 meters all night. And sometimes you can, but it only takes a little bit of a disturbance to really screw things up in the summer. And we had more than a little bit of a disturbance. But there was still some cool QSOs to be made. My favorite one, I worked ZD7TIM on 80, and it was N0UI who actually came to the store one time, which was super cool. And then I talked to him in Dayton, and he was low power, and working him on 80 from Montana was like awesome. Lots of rare DX still called in, not as much as it would have been, but you could work stateside in this contest, so the rate was super good to stateside. There was still a lot of cool stuff to do. So people complain about the bad conditions. Well, at least we didn't fly to New York to break the record and then not have good conditions. So
You're up, Dan, with that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the conditions really sucked. I kind of had an idea going in what it was going to be like because my first day of testing the station, I believe, was like Sunday of the previous week. I've got on the remote, And at that time, the K was really high. It was a 4, and the A was high, and the bands were terrible then. So I my first day of testing, I'm like, man, is this station really any good? I wasn't really sure, you know. But then as the week went on, the K went down, the A went down, and the propagation was amazing all week, Monday through Friday. It was great. Even Friday night leading into the contest, they were still fine. But we knew that the disturbance was coming. And so when the contest rolled around and in the first 15 minutes I had 2 Europeans in the log, I kind of had an idea that that was what was going to happen. And at that point, I knew that the chase for the record was off, but that's okay. You know, it's like, that's one of those things where you can't change the propagation that you're given. So instead of trying to go for the record, I was just, you know, doing my best to make sure that I represented the station well. You know, anytime I do a guest stop like this, I want to make sure that I give a full effort. You know, just to make sure that the host op understands that I took it seriously, and so that's what I did. I went all out for the whole 24 hours. You know, conditions on the low bands were fine. 40, 80, 160 were amazing from New York. I got on 160 for around 0100, sometime in that hour. Called CQ once, and I had like a dozen headquarters stations calling me. I had a pile up of HQ stations, which was kind of cool. So I knocked those out of the way. And then 80 meters, it's not as cool as Chris's ZD7 TIM QSO, but he also called me, and I thought that was really cool, working him on 80. I was surprised how loud he was, too. And then the other really QSO that kind of like sticks in my mind, the only time I heard A60HQ, which is the headquarters stations in UAE, was when he called me on 80 meters. And like, and he was S9, no problem. I'm like, what is this? This is not fair. But yeah, low bands were great. High bands sucked. No record. But, you know, it is what it was. Still had some fun. Lots of cool stuff happened. Just wasn't what I was really hoping for.
So Dan, for those of us, for me, who don't know what the record was, I know you were just over 3 million points and 3830 scores, but what was the record to be broken?
Yeah, so the record is held by our good friend KQ2M. He broke the record in 2014, and I don't know the exact score. It was somewhere in the range of 3.7 to 3.8 million, and that's what I was shooting for, but it just wasn't in the cards.
Randy, any other observations from Ohio?
No, actually, everybody keeps telling me how, Ohio's not going to be good as New England. I guess I certainly recognize that, but anytime the bands are open and you can call people and they come back to you, it seems good enough. So it's fun. I'm in the mode where I'm just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and so I had a good time in my 6 hours of operation.
So at this point, do you guys take the break for the rest of the summer?
Very much so. I am way burned out. I need a break.
Randy never breaks. There's got to be something going on next weekend.
I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, well, I've got some antennas, so I can get on the air and work people now. But it's full every day. I work on antennas. I really appreciate the fact that I don't have to be like Chris, where I drive forever to get to the station. I can go outside every day and get something done, and the goal is to just get to the point where I'm fully operational again, hopefully by early September.
Anything else, or can we wrap up early tonight? I would love to have a short edit.
Your wishes are command.
We can give you lots to edit out.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
Well, I would like to say that working the WRTC test stations was cool, just because I'm hoping to be over there, and it was just cool to hear that side of it. And when 20 was open, they were super loud. It wasn't for a super long opening, but they were crazy loud for 100 watts and a little tri-bander. So that was super encouraging.
I would say not as many headquarters stations as usual, but still great to have them on, populating all the bands. You can really quickly get a feel for if the band's open or not, or how well it's open. The ED0 HQ guys at URE seem to be doing a great job every time I heard them.
My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this has been Q5 Ham Radio with the contest crew. Thank you for joining us.